Hello again, welcome to episode 17 of the Development Diary for Fragile Existence. I know it's been a little bit of a while since I last did one of these development logs. The previous video was the 1 year of development, which I quite enjoyed putting together, and a little bit more streamlined editing than I normally do. But let's roll straight with what I've been working on, and I'm here in the main menu screen here, which is the creation organizer, which organizes the scenarios, the systems, and the planets. Let's just dive straight in and let's do a very creatively named Earth-like planet. And if I go into the editor, this is where the bulk of my work the past 6 weeks or so has been spent. This editor was previously basically nothing, with just a camera that rotated a planetoid, and you couldn't change any of the settings. One of the things you try to do with any kind of programming is to sort of keep certain things static when you're working on something else. So, I didn't want the planets to be all different sizes. I didn't want all sorts of settings, so things you could turn on and off. And changing all these sort of fancy things whilst I was working on the fleet dynamics, the mechanics of moving around the solar system, and all that kind of business. But now I'm at the point where I need the interaction with the ground to make some sort of sense, so we can send the units down, gather resources, do combat, all the good stuff that we need in a typical RTS. And the only way forward is to focus on the geography, focus on the environment, and the things that we're putting on the ground, and how we interact with those things. Okay, so what we already have is a procedural engine here which is building these planetoids. You can see here I can edit it in real time. It doesn't necessarily look super pleasant. I mean, I've just left it loading the mesh as it's ready, and it just, as it finishes each mesh, you can see it's literally just popping it in. You got a little progress bar here to show you that something's happening. And if we change one of these settings, which is specific to the Earth-like planet, it takes a little bit longer to think about, because we're actually rebuilding the climate model for these kind of things. So we can change the land-sea ratio between 0 and 1, 0% land, 100% land, and the temperature settings. The number obviously doesn't relate to a Celsius, it's just a sliding scale. Okay, so we increase the temperature, we get more desert regions, we get more sort of temperate forests, and we tend to get less colder patches. Change the amount of precipitation. This is also using a value from the amount of water that's available, and that multiplies together, and that gives us maximum number of precipitation available. And again, that just makes it more green generally. And if we drop the temperature down, it'll sort of still retain that green temperateness. And we change the max number of continents. If you only want like a one big continent, that allows you to sort of achieve that sort of thing. There's no actual regenerate button. Yeah, I should probably add that. But currently, if you just change the setting a little bit, it'll regenerate anyway. So you can see here we only get a maximum of one continent. Change it to 2. You see what it does there as well. It's quite clever. It works out. Okay, you set it to 3, let's get on with the generation there, and then I very quickly change to 2, and it carries on with the generation to a certain point, then it gives it up and says, right, let's do 2 instead. And so I completely changed the rendering pipeline here, and it's far more efficient. We can do things like turn the sea off, we can turn the atmosphere off, and we can turn the rings off, which are relatively new. So they act independently, so it's only updating the ring, and it's procedural in the sense that it's building a mesh based on these settings, as so. But the texture is currently not procedural. It's actually, the same texture pattern that most people will be using. And eventually what I want to do is put it into the shader, and the lines will be generated as well, like in No Man's Sky and that kind of thing. But there are other things to worry about. The sea being inactive, the black just sort of shows where we got the lower crust regions. I do actually want the bottom of the ocean to be interactable. So whether you've got sea or not, it will matter. There might be resources on a depleted ocean. I thought that'd be quite nice. And we can also change the colors of things here. So it's not letting you change things quite directly. It's multiplying so that the value that I kind of think should be Earth-like planets don't actually go away, if that makes any kind of sense. So you can't actually create really crazy looking atmospheres. You can only make things that are sort of semi-realistic. So there's a bit of trickery going behind the scenes. Rings, for example, you can actually change the color, and it is actually the color you see there. You've already seen the planet radius. So the radius tells us now how small the planets are going to be and how big the planets are going to be. You might initially think that that's not a lot bigger, but you'll see later on when we start adding things to the ground just how big a 200 unit planet actually is, with the ring as large as it goes as well. That is currently the largest planet that I am considering, because you've got no point of contention. You don't know what the scale really is here, but we'll get to that. Okay, so the next stage of the procedural system is to click and we go to the texturing. Now what that does is it does the height map, and the splat mapping system is engaged, and it works out based on the existing biome regions that we saw here. It actually generates it for us, and it tells us what it's going to look like in game. So currently these unlabeled boxes actually allow us to multiply the colors a little bit. So again, I'm not giving you complete control just yet. You're generally just changing like the temperature of the particular splat maps that are being applied. So the desert is slightly more cold looking, and the forest has been made, it's been given a purple tint, which kind of makes it look a little bit brighter. It's very subtle. I might rethink how I'm doing that. But for now it does enough to let us do some slightly different things. So we can change the sun direction, and that's not just for flavor. And note we have the shadow working correctly as well now. The sun direction actually tells us what direction the planet will be placed when we place it in the solar system editor and then take it in game. So because planets don't rotate in my game, it's possible they might in the future, but currently I'm thinking no, it's too tricky to do. But what this is saying is that this side of this planet will be facing whatever sun is positioned in the solar system, and so you know that those areas will be visible, will have sunlight on them, whereas this side will be dark. So this is actually a setting that is saved with the planet gen file, and so you're saying however you position, no matter what sort of orientation the solar system has, that side will be facing the sun. I have to work all the math out for that. When we go to placement mode, we regenerate the textures just to make sure that it's done, and then we're actually shifting to the game camera now. So we can still change this setting as well. We haven't saved anything yet. Save is active now. It's actually not active at the first stage, but we can save whenever now, and it'll generate a thumbnail and it'll save everything we've currently done. So we now have the game camera is active, and this has actually generated the correct zoom values that will be used for this radius of planet. And so the next step then is to actually move on from the procedural systems and move on to the handcrafting. So I've got a bank of 14 items currently which we can place on the planet. So this is working a lot like editors you see in, I don't know, pretty much any engine that lets you make your own levels. I'm literally rotating and changing the height, and then I can place things. Do they look gorgeous? Probably not. These are quite low poly elements. Whether I end up redoing the assets, I'm not entirely sure, but the textures at least are pretty ugly. And it's trying to find a right sort of balance between well, the fact is I never expected to zoom in this far, and as you can see it does look a bit, yeah, like 10 years ago, but from a distance it looks great. So maybe the real zoomed in camera will have to go, I'm not sure, but you can do trees, and we're actually placing them on the nav grid, and it's not currently saying we can't pass through this region. That's one of the next things I'm going to be working on. And we can put things anywhere. We can put it on the dark side as well. It makes no difference. It's quite happy. Obviously, if we are building the dark side, we probably want to do it in the light. And perhaps you can quite quickly see this is a medium-sized planet, and there's already a lot to do, you know. I mean, this is real level editor time here. Like, every planet is handcrafted, and we can place resources down, and the idea, I think, is that they're going to be sort of put in to the mountain sides, and you're actually going to be able to send units to gather these. I haven't decided which represents which resource yet, but you get the idea. And so they're sort of semi-realistically placed in there, and you'll bring a unit round, it'll harvest this and take it back to base, you know, much like StarCraft or whatever, but with a greater range of resources available. We've got some ice patches here that we can put down. I mean, 14 possible features doesn't give you a whole lot to work with, but you know, you see how the sea automatically works out the coastal region on these things, so that's quite nice. And you create little islands, and yeah, so I can save that, and it now has saved all of that, and I can take that into the game now and actually interact with that as part of the game though. But let's look at one I did earlier instead. So I spent about 15 minutes trying to build something using just those 14 tiles, and well, let's see how that turned out. So this is a scenario I've made for this development log. It's got 3 planets, all 3 of them have been customized to some degree. Let's give ourselves a fleet. So we have 5 initial ships here. Some we've seen before. The Tranquility is a support carrier which carries ground units, in this case 3 buggies and a spider tank, and it has, well, let's give it another support unit, so it's got 2 dropships available. Now you see now the rings do actually show up in the world as well as the map. We get the announcement there as well. And the other one you've seen before, I believe, is the heavy transporter. That doesn't really do anything fancy, just got a very large cargo hold. And the Dauntless I've sort of shown off before, Geneva class cruiser. Very sexy looking ship. And this is kind of one of your mainstay vehicles. The Lexington down here is a Daedalus class frigate, a bit smaller, only got 5 slots, whereas the cruiser I'm actually going to add 2 more to balance things out. And then we got the strike carrier, which can actually carry strike craft, the Griffin class fighters here, and at some point this is actually going to function as an aircraft carrier. They've sort of started the work on that. You can sort of see where the launch bay is on that thing, and it is going to be able to launch fighters to support things. It's got a lot of slots available. Likewise, the support carrier's got a whole lot as well. And if we go into the modules, you can see we've got the launch bay, which is a new thing as well. And I've previously showed how you could promote a leader. The leaders currently don't do anything, but I've moved that down to here, and so they're color coded with their type. So aviation and engineering here. You wouldn't normally just be able to promote like that, but eventually the leaders will fill in this box here with the tasks that you can do. It's a little bit like build options. Okay, so let's pause things and then set these guys moving as a fleet. Currently you have to do each individual one, but eventually you just be able to group select and they'll all move together. Group select is a little bit trickier, so I want to hold off on doing that just yet. Oh, sorry, group movement. Group select kind of works okay, it's just not really doing anything. So you see here the fleet is moving towards the first planet, and I don't know whether you can see, it depends whether you're in a dark room, but there is interstellar dust now. You can see there as we sort of move through. That was very, very tricky to put together. I'm going to kind of have to talk about that at some other point. It is actually static particles placed throughout the solar system, but it turned out to be a hell of a lot of work. Probably 2 weeks just getting that to work. I'll probably talk about that in length in the blog that I post as well on the TIG website. Right, so the fleet has arrived. They're all entering orbit relative to their offset. Some of them do it better than others apparently. This is a very small planet. So the orbit region, remember this is the smallest type of planet you can get. You see the green circle there isn't quite working correctly, but as bugs go, that is fine. This is the smallest kind of planet you can get. So this illustrates what you can do. And you can see I've taken some time here to, let's just move the aircraft carrier around. Aircraft carrier, strike carrier. And you can see here that I've placed quite a few mountains. I've got resources sort of nestled in here. Plenty of trees. Sort of tried to change things based on the biome. We've got some resources down here. You can make some islands out to sea as well. Clumps of trees. We got some salvage potential here. So these ships are crash ships, because when you start the game, you'll still be in like the near Earth territories, and there'll be lots of things lying around that you can salvage. So you'll send a unit to that, and you'll gain either specific modules or components, and you'll be able to make use of those. So you can kind of see the idea here that I'm trying to nestle these resources into the mountains semi-realistically. This island's got this, whatever this blue resource is here. I haven't considered what they're called yet. You can do some things with the mountains. You sort of put them underwater, and same with the ice patches. You can see I clearly need to add in a lot more features to put down, but for 14 items I think we've done pretty well. Let's get these strike ships launched anyhow. And like so. This is a little bit buggy, but it's not bad. So of course they are not leaving by the point that they should currently, but you get the idea of the size difference. They're a lot faster as well. They're using different engines, and they're not so much moving in formation just yet, but that's to come. So you can actually select them, you just can't tell them to go together. They, at the moment, just one thing moves at a time, so formation type stuff is a work in progress. But I've improved the camera for these because they were so small compared to everything else. I had to sort of get back into the camera system and change it so it works based on a size profile which I set for each unit, and so the maximum zoom is different depending on the actual total size. So the little things let you do that really nice sort of mega zoom in that you see in pretty much any space game that has fighters. And they look, I don't know, they look quite nice. They're modular as well. Pretty much everything is modular apart from the capital ships. So what you can do is you can actually change these guns, you can change the engines, you can add extra wings, you can add things to the front as well. This is a model that is actually made up of, what is it, 1, 2, I think 5, 6, 7 parts, and so you will actually be able to change things out in game. That is the intention. Same with the ground units. So all the ground stuff that I've done so far is modular, so you will be able to change the weapons, you'll be able to change like the movement mode, that kind of thing. Let's get some things on the ground just to sort of illustrate that as well. Get a buggy down because I haven't showed one of them before. But you can see here this is a very small planet, and this gives you an idea of what to expect from the smallest planet. The dropships have been reworked as well, by the way. They don't go through the ground anymore, and I kind of showed that in my previous video, but I haven't talked about it yet. Like, it's actually using procedural animation to work a number of things out related to how close it is to the ground. And if you actually, if I add another one, sorry, that's used up the dropship I just added, but if we try to deploy all the way over here, the dropship now knows it needs to move around orbit until a certain point where it can start to drop. So that's all working nicely now. What I haven't actually added yet is dropping the base modules, or what I'm calling prefabs. So the idea is you can send a dropship down to, say, here, and you'll drop these type of things, which are like prefab base installations that you can pick back up afterwards. So these are habitat prefabs, for example, and These are modular as well, so again I can change how they work when you upgrade them, and there'll be different ones for different purposes. Like there'll be a resource gathering one, there'll be like base defense ones as well, and so you can send people down in here, and then people are available to start doing things around the base, and you can build base installations around these things as well. It's just that the good thing about the prefabs is you can pick them back up with a dropship again later on. So it gives you the opportunity to sort of keep upgrading your base without having to restart every time. And so here's the quad, and this little guy is pretty nifty. I haven't done rounded waypoints yet. I'm assuming you want to stop at every waypoint that you give, but that might not necessarily be true. Like in StarCraft, for example, that would round that off and you wouldn't actually stop if you assign more waypoints. So I may give the option for that. I can certainly do that. And you see how this gives you an angle where you can definitely see things in more detail. The trees stand out very well, but the mountains don't necessarily hold up as well. But I don't know, I like it. I think the planets are very pretty. Definitely from this sort of perspective, it gives you a sense of a lot going on, even though nothing's moving. And so let me see, I got some other planets as well. This is a medium-sized planet. I've just sort of added some trees here just to, and a little cross that marks something maybe. And you got a sort of methane-style atmosphere working there. And you can sort of see how you have much more room here. Oh, there's a downship. And you can already see how that would take some time to actually add all the features onto. I'll probably need much bigger features so you can sort of cover more area. So that's a medium-sized planet, and the largest I believe is up here. Yeah, there you go. So there's the same size cross, and I'll show some trees. There's like breadcrumbs going out, and you can see there's a lot more land space here, and it's potentially too many features. I'm not sure. It might break the rendering a little bit. We'll have to see. But that's as big as I'm thinking of going. I love the rings, by the way. They work pretty well. It's really nice to see the atmospheres working differently as well, like not just using purely physically based my array scattering. So is that it? Maybe. I want to give a shout out to Todd from Stutterfox Studios. He recently gave a bit of a shout out to Fragile Existence on his Discord, and it's really great of him. Thanks for that. If you haven't heard of Fallen Frontier, for those few of you who are actually here of your own free will, you should go and check that out, and it will be ad free. And yeah, I think it's looking great. I mean, like Fallen Frontier and this, just in case there was any confusion there. I'm very happy. So now what I'm going to work on next is interacting with these resources and being able to actually start building bases without having to actually place them myself. For those of you who haven't seen the spider tank, this is this little dude here. He is fully animated, and you can actually change the wheels as well as legs, so there'll be like 2 different modes. And he is cool, but he currently doesn't shoot at anything because there's no combat yet. We're getting there. Okay, well that is it for log 17. Hopefully I'll do another one next month, and again, thanks for watching.